Jon Moxley didn't just leave WWE, he escaped from a creative prison that was systematically destroying his wrestling soul. And what he revealed about Vince McMahon's backstage control will make you question everything you think you know about sports entertainment versus professional wrestling. The Dean Ambrose character wasn't just bad booking, it was deliberate creative sabotage designed to break Moxley's spirit and prove that WWE's system was more powerful than any individual performer's talent. They turned one of wrestling's most authentic voices into a sanitized corporate puppet, and then acted surprised when fans rejected the watered-down version of a wrestler who should have been their next Stone Cold Steve Austin. But here's what WWE will never admit. Jon Moxley's transformation into wrestling's most dangerous loose cannon in AEW exposed every single flaw in their creative philosophy. His success outside their system proved that WWE's writers, producers, and executives have been systematically destroying wrestler creativity for decades. The Shield wasn't lightning in a bottle. It was three generational talents being held back by a corporate system that feared authentic personalities more than it valued entertaining television. Roman Reigns got the corporate push, Seth Rollins got the technical showcase matches, but Jon Moxley got the creative burial that was designed to teach every other wrestler what happens when you question WWE's authority. When Moxley walked away from guaranteed millions to bet on himself in the independent wrestling scene, he didn't just change his career trajectory, he started a revolution that has fundamentally altered the wrestling industry's power structure. WWE's monopolistic control over professional wrestling died the moment Jon Moxley stepped through the curtain at AEW's Double or Nothing. The germaphobe Dean Ambrose storyline wasn't just terrible television, it was psychological warfare designed to humiliate a performer who had spent years building credibility as wrestling's toughest anti-hero. WWE's creative team took everything that made Moxley special and systematically destroyed it on national television. But Vince McMahon and his writing staff made a critical miscalculation. They thought breaking Jon Moxley would send a message to other wrestlers about the consequences of creative rebellion. Instead, they created the blueprint for how WWE superstars could escape their corporate prison and reclaim their wrestling identities. Chris Jericho's podcast interview with Jon Moxley wasn't just entertaining behind-the-scenes gossip. It was a devastating expose of WWE's creative dysfunction that revealed how the company's micromanagement philosophy has been destroying wrestling careers for decades. Every horror story Moxley shared about script rewrites, corporate interference, and creative sabotage opened the door for other wrestlers to speak out about their own experiences. The truth about Dean Ambrose's final WWE run is far more sinister than creative incompetence. WWE's writing team knew exactly what they were doing when they turned Moxley into a joke character. They were conducting a public humiliation campaign designed to discourage other wrestlers from questioning creative decisions. New Japan Pro Wrestling didn't just give Jon Moxley better matches, they reminded him that professional wrestling could be an art form rather than corporate entertainment. His brutal death matches and technical classics in NJPW proved that WWE's limitations weren't protecting him from dangerous situations, they were protecting the company from liability while preventing him from reaching his full potential as a performer. AEW's treatment of Jon Moxley reveals everything wrong with WWE's talent development philosophy. Instead of restricting his creative input, Tony Khan encouraged Moxley to contribute to his own storylines. Instead of scripting his promos word for word, AEW allowed him to speak from the heart. The result was television that felt authentic instead of manufactured. The Wednesday night war between AEW Dynamite and WWE NXT wasn't just about television ratings, it was about two fundamentally different approaches to professional wrestling creativity. WWE's corporate entertainment model competed against AEW's wrestler-driven storytelling philosophy, and the results speak for themselves. Jon Moxley's AEW World Championship reign proved that wrestlers perform better when they're treated as creative collaborators rather than interchangeable corporate assets. His promos felt real because they came from his actual experiences and emotions rather than scripted dialogue written by television writers who have never stepped inside a wrestling ring. But here's what makes wrestling fans absolutely furious. WWE had access to Jon Moxley's incredible talent for 8 years and chose to waste it on corporate-approved storylines that satisfied no one. They prioritized their creative control over entertaining their audience, and then blamed declining ratings on changing audience preferences rather than acknowledging their own creative failures. The Shield's breakup wasn't just the end of WWE's most successful stable, it was the beginning of three completely different career trajectories that perfectly illustrate WWE's booking priorities. Roman Reigns got the main event push despite fan rejection. Seth Rollins got the technical showcase opportunities. Jon Moxley got the creative burial designed to prove that WWE's system was more important than individual talent. Every terrible Dean Ambrose segment from his final WWE run becomes even more insulting when you compare it to Jon Moxley's AEW work. The same performer who was delivering forgettable comedy skits on Monday Night Raw was creating wrestling masterpieces on Wednesday Night Dynamite less than a year later. WWE's response to Jon Moxley's AEW success reveals their fundamental misunderstanding of why fans rejected the Dean Ambrose character. Instead of acknowledging their creative mistakes, WWE doubled down on the corporate entertainment philosophy that drove Moxley away in the first place. The Renee Young marriage storyline that WWE never fully explored represents a massive missed opportunity that perfectly encapsulates their creative dysfunction. Instead of incorporating Moxley's real-life relationship into compelling television, WWE kept his personal life completely separate from his character development, creating a sanitized version of a wrestler whose authenticity should have been his greatest strength. Jon Moxley's indie wrestling tours between WWE and AEW weren't just about staying in ring shape. They were about rediscovering his passion for professional wrestling after years of corporate creative suppression. His matches for Game Changer Wrestling and other independent promotions reminded him why he fell in love with wrestling before WWE's system nearly destroyed that passion. The most infuriating aspect of Jon Moxley's WWE experience is how predictable his creative burial became. Wrestling fans could see that WWE was systematically destroying everything special about his character, but the company continued down that path because admitting their mistakes would have meant acknowledging that their creative philosophy was fundamentally flawed. AEW's willingness to let Jon Moxley bleed, curse, and engage in extreme violence wasn't just about creating more realistic wrestling. It was about respecting the performer's artistic vision instead of forcing him to conform to corporate content restrictions that served no creative purpose. The contrast between Dean Ambrose's scripted WWE promos and Jon Moxley's unscripted AEW interviews is like comparing a corporate training video to a masterclass in professional wrestling psychology. WWE's writers took one of wrestling's most natural talkers and forced him to recite dialogue that sounded nothing like his actual personality. Jon Moxley's relationship with Eddie Kingston in AEW created more authentic emotional investment from wrestling fans than anything Dean Ambrose accomplished during his final 2 years in WWE. The difference was that AEW allowed their real-life friendship to inform their on-screen chemistry instead of forcing them to follow predetermined character dynamics. WWE's treatment of Jon Moxley during the Shield's reunion tour proved that the company learned nothing from their previous creative mistakes. Instead of acknowledging what made the group special in the first place, WWE used the reunion as a nostalgic cash grab that reminded fans how much potential they had wasted through poor creative decisions. The most shocking revelation about Jon Moxley's WWE experience is how much creative input he was denied despite being one of their most talented performers. WWE's fear of losing creative control prevented them from utilizing one of their best assets, ultimately driving him to a competing promotion that was eager to showcase his abilities. Every Jon Moxley match in AEW feels like a rebuke to WWE's creative limitations. His technical wrestling ability, promo skills, and natural charisma were always there. WWE just refused to let him display them in meaningful ways because doing so would have required acknowledging that their corporate entertainment model was inferior to traditional wrestling storytelling. The brand split that separated the Shield members onto different WWE shows wasn't just about creating unique roster identities. It was about preventing the trio from developing the kind of creative chemistry that might have challenged WWE's centralized booking philosophy. Keeping them apart ensured that no individual wrestler could become bigger than the corporate system. Jon Moxley's AEW debut at Double or Nothing generated more genuine excitement from wrestling fans than anything Dean Ambrose had accomplished in years. The difference wasn't just about surprise appearances, it was about fans finally seeing a wrestler they cared about being treated with the creative respect he deserved. WWE's insistence on scripted promos for experienced performers like Jon Moxley reveals their fundamental distrust of wrestler creativity. Instead of allowing natural talkers to develop their characters organically, WWE forces everyone to recite corporate-approved dialogue that sounds artificial and disconnected from their actual personalities. The ratings success of AEW Dynamite during Jon Moxley's championship reign proves that wrestling fans were hungry for the authentic storytelling that WWE had been denying them. Moxley's reign felt important because AEW allowed it to feel important, rather than undermining their own champion through poor creative decisions. Jon Moxley's willingness to work for independent promotions while under AEW contract demonstrates the fundamental difference between Tony Khan's talent relations philosophy and WWE's exclusive contractor restrictions. AEW treats wrestlers as human beings with diverse career interests, while WWE views them as corporate properties to be controlled and restricted. The creative freedom that allowed Jon Moxley to develop his paradigm shift finisher in AEW illustrates how WWE's micromanagement philosophy extends to every aspect of wrestler presentation. Even basic elements like finishing moves require corporate approval in WWE's system, preventing wrestlers from developing signature elements that reflect their individual personalities. WWE's handling of Dean Ambrose's heel turn represents everything wrong with their approach to character development. Instead of exploring the psychological motivations that might drive Moxley's character to embrace darker impulses, WWE focused on surface-level annoyances like crowd noise and hygiene concerns that made him look petty rather than dangerous. The international wrestling community's embrace of Jon Moxley proves that WWE's creative limitations were preventing one of their most talented performers from reaching a global audience. His matches in Japan, Mexico, and Europe showcased wrestling abilities that WWE never allowed him to display on their programming. Jon Moxley's AEW merchandise sales demonstrate the commercial value of authentic character development versus corporate manufactured personas. Fans connect with genuine personalities, and Moxley's t-shirts and other products sell because they represent something real rather than something created by focus group testing and market research. The creative partnership between Jon Moxley and AEW's writers produces television that feels spontaneous and unpredictable, while WWE's micromanaged approach created Dean Ambrose segments that felt scripted and artificial. The difference in audience engagement speaks to wrestling fans' preference for authentic storytelling over corporate entertainment. WWE's inability to create compelling storylines for the Shield's reunion tour revealed how dependent they had become on past successes rather than developing new creative directions. Instead of building on what made the group special, WWE relied on nostalgia to generate temporary interest without creating lasting value. The most damaging aspect of WWE's treatment of Jon Moxley was how it demonstrated to other wrestlers that creative talent and fan support meant nothing if you didn't fit their corporate mold. His experience sent a message that WWE valued compliance over creativity, discouraging other performers from pushing for better storylines. AEW's willingness to acknowledge Jon Moxley's WWE experience rather than pretending it never happened shows respect for wrestling history that WWE rarely demonstrates toward former employees. Instead of erasing inconvenient parts of wrestler backgrounds, AEW incorporates those experiences into compelling storylines. The technical wrestling ability that Jon Moxley displays in AEW was always there during his WWE run, but the company's entertainment focus prevented him from showcasing those skills in meaningful ways. AEW's sports-centric approach allows wrestlers to demonstrate their full range of abilities rather than restricting them to predetermined character limitations. Jon Moxley's success in AEW proves that WWE's creative problems aren't limited to individual performers, they represent systematic issues with how the company approaches professional wrestling as an art form. The same talent that produced forgettable television in WWE creates compelling content in AEW because the creative environment encourages rather than restricts performer input. The wrestling industry's transformation since Jon Moxley left WWE demonstrates the ripple effects of one performer's decision to prioritize creative fulfillment over financial security. His choice to leave guaranteed millions inspired other wrestlers to demand better treatment and pursue alternative opportunities outside WWE's corporate system. Every Jon Moxley interview about his WWE experience provides additional evidence of the company's creative dysfunction, but WWE continues operating under the same philosophy that drove away one of their most talented performers. Their unwillingness to acknowledge these problems suggests that other wrestlers will face similar creative restrictions until WWE fundamentally changes their approach to talent development. The contrast between Dean Ambrose's WWE merchandise and Jon Moxley's AEW products illustrates how corporate control extends beyond television programming to every aspect of wrestler presentation. WWE's focus group tested designs pale in comparison to authentic representations of Moxley's actual personality and interests. Jon Moxley's AEW run represents the wrestling industry's potential when performers are treated as creative collaborators rather than corporate employees following predetermined scripts. His success outside WWE's system proves that the company's creative limitations were holding back not just individual wrestlers, but the entire art form of professional wrestling.